Well, I've got to hurry. I got cut off. Welcome back to Indian Trace. I've been asked to highlight a little more of my top shelf and quartz, if you will. And so I just grabbed another top shelf bin, and I think we'll have enough natural light to get this done. Just was figuring this video out, and it got interrupted and cut off. Just the way it works if you're doing it with a phone. But you guys have seen this, an interesting perspective. Of course, the ones we just saw there are from here. Okay? Now, the perspective is that is a pretty good proportion of what's in the ground here. You got about a 60% rhyolite. The greenish, the tans, the browns, lots of rhyolite, even down to the smaller points. And then you have about a 40% mixed quartz, and it's just what they had here, smoky quartz and what have you. And that's just how it works, and just flowing with it. Now this here, well, this is about how many fit in one bin. That's amazing. I mean, a whole frame worth. So I still haven't figured out, and you guys know, over 8 years haven't figured out what in the earth, or how on earth to display them all. Don't know how many of you are bookworms. You can't do well with artifacts or loving them without learning about the people. At least going back as far as you can to primary source resource, and that's not as far as you can go back. 1817, that's not as far as you can go back. And that's not as far as you can go back. Well, actually, this is close to primary source resource, all we have that's written without bias, but you got to take that into perspective. A couple books I'm getting ready to read. I can't recommend them yet. Now, I can recommend the Iroquois book I'm reading on diplomacy in the Northeast, and that covers the years of, gosh, I can't remember exactly, but starting around 1550, 1600s, with some at least good documents recorded by Jesuits and what have you about the Iroquois and how they handled their politics. Great stuff. Here's a point from Mecca, and I'll try to get through this. Busy time of day, I might get interrupted, but I'm looking at good natural light. Some people think, oh God. Well, I don't think it's boring. These are food getters, but more than that, every one of these, I would love to see the human being that made this and just be able to check, just have a good snapshot of them. They're awesome individuals. Responsible, both them, their mates, the women, for their textiles, their protection, their clothing. I mean, it's just crazy. Here's a point from the clay pot. Just absolutely good quartz. So these points in this set, in this group, of course, have found the place in my heart where I'm just going to keep loving them. Some points I'll get to the place where I've loved them long enough and I've got to move them forward, which is about 80-90% of the stuff that I might find. But what you see in a display box is simply 5%, maybe 10%. So out there in the ground, there's a ton of what they use to get their food through 5, 6, 7, 8, 9,000 years plus. It's craziness. Here's a point from Mecca. It's nice. There's a couple great points up at the top. And I've seen a lot of your collections. I often mention the point about museums. What we have is our own personal museums. This is just as good or better than many museums that we have gone to. I'm happy they were able to save and display a lot of stuff to stir the curiosity of a lot of people. When I was young and I went, I was just like, oh my God. But then I think now when I look at some of the displays that curators put together, at least some of them, They're not half as concerned about whether or not what they're putting together is authentic or an artistic rendering. Mix them together sometimes and open displays and what have you. So I think the artifact community on YouTube right now are top end when it comes to your knowledge of this stuff. I don't know much. I've only studied maybe 9 years. Before that, I studied the North American Indian, but I studied anthropologically. I just wasn't even thinking about the archaeology of it. Wasn't even thinking about the reality of being able to purposely go glean the evidence of their life and save it. That's what we're looking at. Another point right here, that was from, both of these right here are from the archaic. These two. This point right here is from Site 7. It's a very unique point. I don't think I've ever found a point like this one. We say that all the time. They're all different. And here's a point from the easement. This point and this point came from the exact same place. See the base on that? And this point. Totally different eras, I bet you. Separated by, at the very least, 1,000 years. I bet you. This is a sturdy, devastating point. So as I finish up, I didn't want to make it real long, but I did want to do this for a couple shout outs and some people who love quartz. Of course, you got to have something to set the atmosphere. Settle down after driving that train and working for a living. Get these 2 points in the middle. Really good stuff. I don't know what they napped quartz with. Rob, you can tell me. Somebody can tell me. Ken, you can tell me. Flintsball, you can tell me. What on earth do they nap this stuff with? Especially the small, super detailed stuff. I mean, I know they ground some of the bases and what have you, but I mean, look at this thing. Found at Mecca. It's a devastating mix of crystal quartz and just making it work. They knew what they needed. And it wasn't a point like this, it was meat. That's why I call them meat getters. They knew it. I love meat eaters. You ever seen that show? Anyway, I'm a meat eater. Love it. And support it. Some people don't much believe in the Bible, but I believe it emphatically. And it says, all things are to be received with thanksgiving and are sanctified through prayer and the word. That includes all animals, organisms, that sort of stuff. There's nothing unclean. Not nothing. We have a lot of ideas and opinions about what's clean and what's not, and we stick our nose in other people's business. Just, I say, hey, let a fella eat whatever he wants. It's pretty simple, right? Nice set. Hope everybody finds out there, and I just wanted to give you a good look at some, at least what I think is this great quartz.